Greetings, friend. This is Escargot by Arto Inkala, which pops up if you Google World's Hardest Sudoku. Okay, if you change these three digits, this 3, 6, and 2, you get this puzzle, Snailed It by Philip Newman, which has the same grid layout as Escargot, but just has those three different givens. So you could argue by similarity that this is almost the world's hardest Sudoku. Philip posted Snailed It on April Fool's Day on the CTC Discord, and then it was given to Mark Goodliffe for cracking the Cryptic to solve his GAS puzzles. Knowing that it was put on the Discord on April 1st, and that Philip has pranked Mark before with some of his GAS puzzles, Mark predicted this outcome, and I quote, "I suspect this is extraordinarily difficult and could be my first ever fail on GAS." Well, how did Mark do? Keep watching. I'll show you that along with pause the video and what if moments. Click below if you want to give it a go. With that, it's solving time. Okay, the first thing Mark does is some standard notation. Anytime a 3x3 block, you only have two possibilities for candidate, you'll mark him in. But he's very hesitant. He thinks he's getting pranked, and so he's worried that this is a really, really hard Sudoku. But then he finds that actually with these two 7s and this 7 in column 9, he can solve for 7 here, row 3, column 8. And then he makes some more standard notation marks down here in block 9. Makes some marks for 7th in block 6. And then he looks over and actually finds a 4, because you got the 4s here in rows 5 and 6, and this 4 in column 2. So he solves for 4, row 4, column 1, marks some 4s up in block 1, also marks some 8s up in block 1 because of these two 8s. And then he does some 9s up in block 4, or down here in block 4, I should say. But he could have actually solved, if you had saw these two 7s, he could have solved right there for a 7. He didn't see that right away. And then he marks some 7s down here. He actually does 3 7s. Didn't see that there's a 7 right there. And this is really not normal Snyder. You only want to put 2 possibilities for a candidate, because the idea is you're eliminating one to get to another. But when you do a lot of variants, sometimes you'll mark all 3 across the row like that. And I think that's where Mark got that. I hadn't seen him really do that much. Then he marks some 3s in block 8. Noticing you got these two 3s here and this 3. Then he actually solves over here and goes, oh yeah, I can actually solve this cell for a 7, which makes that cell a 9. Okay, after solving the 9, he focuses on the 7s again and sees, okay, I have this 7. I had made a mark there, so I can actually solve that cell for a 7, remove this notation mark. So he's still a little trepid. It's kind of like someone who walks through a haunted house and you're expecting something to jump out at you. That's the way he's solving this puzzle, much slower than his normal solve. Then he looks in here in block 5 and marks 2 9s, goes down in block 8. And what he notices is you got these 9s in columns 4 and 6 in block 2, 4 and 6 in block 5. This makes a mini X-wing. And so because the 9s are limited to those 2 columns and those 2 blocks, you know the 9s have to be in column 5 down here in block 8. And that's pretty common, but he marks all 3 of those. After marking those 9s, he then comes up and finishes this block. So he's looking for some restrictions right now. Still expecting it to be pretty hard. So he puts a 2, 3, 8 in block 4. And then he marks some 9s down here in block 7. And almost immediately after doing that, he notices a naked single along column 1. So this brings us up to our first pause the video moment. Pause the video and see if you can find a naked single in column 1. Well, I'll give you a few seconds. Try to find the one that Mark finds, but there's a bonus if you can find the other one. There's actually 2 naked singles in this column. Okay, congratulations. If you found it, you're getting really good at finding and doing these GAS puzzles. Those of you who just want to enjoy the show, the one that Mark found is right here. He found that there's a 2, right? Because you got a 1 here, you have a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and a 9. This is a naked single 2. The other one that you could have found is actually right up here, and this is the next cell that Mark filled out. Is a 5, because you have the 1, you actually have the 2 right there. You still got the 3, 4, you got the 6, 7, and you have this other 8 and the 9. And so you could have solved the 5 or the 2 in either order. And that's the way Mark found them. Okay, and if you're just not familiar with how to find and look for these naked singles and solve puzzles like this, look at the pinned comment below. and download my free solving guide. And you can solve Sudoku like this even better. And while you're at it, subscribe to Smart Hobbies and you won't miss any new content. Okay, after doing the 2 and the 5, he did mark some 8 and 9 down here, going, okay, that's got to be a naked pair 8 and 9. And then he says, okay, this is going to be a lot better than I thought. So he's getting a little bit of confidence back. And this kind of reminded me, the way he's acting reminded me of an analysis video I did of a Bremster solver. Bremster, he's feeling a little bit under the weather. He's a little stressed. And so he solved a classic Sudoku, and it was a lot harder for him than it needed to be. So stay tuned to the end. I do a great analysis of that video. You will want to check that out. It'll help you get better at solving these types of Sudokus. All right, after doing all that, he does find a hidden single 1 down here because of the 1 in column 2 and row 7. And then he looks right here and puts a 2, 6 because he's looking for buy value sell. Still think it's going to be hard. He's kind of starting to mark, and he goes, okay, this has got to be a 2, 5, 6 down here. So he does the 2, 6 and the 2, 5, 6 in block 7. Then he does some Snyder marks over here in block 6. And then he notices he can actually solve because this is a 1, this is a pointing pair of 1, so 1s can't be anywhere else along column 9 except right here in block 6. And so with this 1 coming across row 1, he can actually solve for a 1. He solves that 1 in row 2, column 7. And then he's like, okay, this is feeling like a GAS puzzle because I've been solving pretty well here, but this is a point where he probably get a little stuck. So he still thinks he's going to get pranked at some point. Then he notices he can put some 2s, he can put 2 1s here in block 2. And then he puts a 3, 6 right there, buy value sell. Make a note of this. This buy value sell is going to be pretty important here in just a minute. We'll come back to it. After the 3, 6, put some 8s down here in block 8. He's slowing down a little bit because he can't really find a good solve. Then he notices he can actually solve for a 7 in here in block 5 because of this 7 and the 2 7s in rows 4 and 5. After solving that 7, he puts some 8s over here in block 6 because there are 2 spots for the 8. After doing the 8s, he puts 8s down here in block 9 because now the 8s are a pointing pair. And he said, I think I can get to the point where I feel pretty good, even if really hard, if I could bifurcate this to the end. So he's always thinking maybe I'll have to bifurcate at some point. But then he does something that's really helpful and helps him out with this puzzle. He puts and finds that this is a 3, 6 right here. And so what that creates is this 3, 6 naked pair. And this is huge. It's probably one of the key solves of this puzzle that keeps it kind of to the GAS level. You need to find that. And so this brings us up to our first what if moment. What if Mark didn't find this 3, 6 naked pair? Okay. The reason this is important is that it really improves your scaling. I'll show you. The next thing you can do, there's one other solve you can make, and it's look with these 7s. So you got these 2 7s here and these 2 7s. You could put a 7 right there. All right, after that, the next solve you have to make any progress is you got to find and solve a cell here in row 3. If you don't have the 3 and the 6 right there, so I'll get rid of those, then in order to find the missing cell, you have to look and find that there's actually a 4 that you can solve here, right? Because this cell can't be a 4 because of this 4. Can't be a 4 here because of this 4. It can't be a 4 here because of this 4. So you're scanning across 4 cells along 3 blocks in order to find that hidden single 4. But when you put the naked pair right there, now you've limited your scanning to 2 cells in 1 block. And so now you know that with this 4, you can immediately solve for the 4 right there. And that's what Mark found, and it made the solve much easier. So let's get back to the main solve. So Mark solves the 4 in row 3, column 5, and the 1 in row 3, column 6. Gets a little happy about that. Makes some 4s markings down there in block 8, some 1s in block 5. Then he's able to solve for a 1 using this as a pointing pair. That's no longer a 1, so he can solve this 1 in row 4, column 9. After that, he makes some marks for 1s in row 8 or block 8 because you got this 1 coming down and you got the 2 1s cutting across row 7 and 8. After that, he's marking some 3s up here in block 2. And he notices, he says, offset pairings suggest some sort of clever difficulty thing. Still thinking there's an issue that Philip put into this puzzle there. And he also marks some 4s up here in block 3. After that, He's marking some 5s up there in block 2, and he slows up a little bit. And the reason he slowed up because he did some mismarking down here. If he was able to solve the 7, this would have helped him out quite a bit. Instead, he kind of looked and then finally figured out, oh, okay, I can actually solve this cell for a 7. So he marks that 7, and then he is able to remove the 4 that was in there. And so by removing that 4, he's able to solve the 4 in row 9, column 4, and then the 1 in row 9, column 5, and which displaces the Snyder marks up here in block 5. So he's able to solve for that 1. Then he comes back to the 4s. He goes, only one place left for 4 up here in block 9. So he solves that 4. Row 7, column 7 displaces that 8. He's able to solve row 8, column 7. Then comes on up here, and this is where he ends up making a lot more time to do something, because he comes up and he notices, okay, I can put a 4 right here in this cell because of the 4 now displaces that Snyder. If he had stayed up here and went across, he might have gotten a little bit of a quicker solve here, but he missed that. Instead, he kind of came back down and got a little lost. And then he looked over and said, oh, I can actually solve this 8 and 9 now because of this 8. So there's a 9 and there's an 8. After doing that, he's able to realize he displaced this Snyder 9, so he can solve for 9 there. And he cleans up the block a little bit, but he's still kind of looking around, not really figuring out where the next move is there. He does go, okay, I just displaced this Snyder 9 here, so I can actually solve for the 9 in row 9, column 9, and remove that mark. But then he starts filling in more blocks. So he fills in a 2, 5, 6 to finish up block 9. He then notices here in column 7 there's only 2 candidates. There's a 2, 6. So he puts a 2, 6 there. He's then able to solve and looks across and actually notices that there's a naked triple 2, 5, 6, which leaves an 8. So he solves that for an 8 versus just seeing that there's 2 8s in rows 8 and 9. Either way, he got it done. He comes up and now he's still trying to fill out stuff. So he's filling out these areas. And he goes, okay, I'm going to put 2, 6 right here. You can learn a lot from when Mark solves. In fact, that he's really good actually at finding where the by value cells need to be filled in, because then just like with this 3, 6, he was able to make an easier solve later. But in this case, he's a little lost. And so now he's just filling in where there's 2 and 3 cells remaining, and he's just starting to fill in the candidates, which clutters the grid up and it slows down your solving quite a bit. If it's truly a GAS, you won't need to fill in this much as Mark's about to do. And the fact is, because he was up here, he missed an easy solve, which would have got him to move on without having to make all these extra markings. And so this brings us up to our next pause the video moment. All right, pause the video and see if you can solve for a cell up here in block 1 that would help move you along this puzzle while I give you a few seconds. Okay, congratulations if you spot it. You are an expert at Sudoku. And if you just notice that there's a 4 right here, that displaces the Snyder 4, and you can solve for a 4 right there, displacing the 8, solve for the 8, and this solve gets a lot quicker. But Mark missed that, and so he ends up doing a lot more markings in the grid. All right, get back to the main solve here. He did not see this 4 and 8 yet. Instead, he finished along row 4 and put a 2, 6, 8 in there. Then he started marking the 3s in block 6, and then in block 3. After marking the 3s, he fills out the 2, 3, 6 up in the corner there. And then he comes down and fills out a 2, 3, 5. He's filling out column 9 now. He didn't need to mark the 3, right? Because he put those 2 3s right there. So it's a mismarking there. And it will slow him up a little bit later. I put the 2, 5, 6 now down here, and he finishes up block 8 with all the markings 2, 3, 5, 6 as required. Puts in, and now he's kind of looking across, and he's actually looking up column 5 now. So he puts the 5, 6 there, and 3, 5, 6 up in block 2. After doing the 3, 5, 6, he then cuts across here and puts in a 2, 5, 6, and notices a naked quad. He notices 2, 3, 5, 6 are limited to the same 4 cells. And so when you're doing a lot of marking, you'll notice the naked quads and triples first, instead of like noticing that there's actually a hidden single over here or a hidden pair. So he, kind of show you where the naked quad is. Remember, the 4 candidates are just limited to those 4 cells. If you didn't see that, you can just look here and see these 2 4s, and this 4 means this cell has to be a 4. Eventually, Mark figures that out, what the naked quad signifies, and he solves for 4, he solves for the 8. Now he gets back on track. He solves for 2 there in block 4. After solving for the 2, he solves the 3 and the 8 pretty quickly in block 4, kind of finishes up block 4. After solving that, he cuts up and solves the 6 and 8 across row 4. All right, so he's making some headway here. Still not sure if it's an easy puzzle or not, if he's going to get stuck or not. After doing the 8, he comes back down here and goes, okay, I see the 6. I can actually solve for a 5. He kind of missed that earlier because that 6 was there the whole time. After solving the 5, he then marks a 2, 3 here, which, if he followed his markings, he could have solved that for the 2 right away, but it doesn't. But he does see this is a 2, 3 pair, and so he knows he can solve this for a 6. It can't be a 2 anymore. And then he's able to clear up the marks and solve for a 5 here in block 6. After solving for that 5, he then kind of moves down and cleans up the 5s a little bit and goes, okay, this has to be just a 2, 6, can't be a 5 anymore. So this cell has to be a 5. It's the only place left for 5 in block 9. All right. It kind of cuts across and knows, okay, the 5 can't be up here anymore. The only place for a 5 in block 7 is down there. So he cleans up those marks, and then he kind of focuses back here on column 5 and goes, okay, you can get rid of those 5s. So he gets rid of the Snyder mark 5. I can solve for a 5 up here in row 1, column 4, which eliminates this 5, and this 5 eliminates the 5 down. So there's only one place left for 5 down here in block 8. So he kind of cleans all that up and solves for that 5. And then he's able to solve for the 3 and the 6 right away. Now he's making his way across. He's got a lot more confidence now. But he goes across row 1, goes, okay, that's going to be a 2. He knows there's going to be a 3, but he holds off for a little special surprise at the end. He even says that to the viewers. Instead, comes down here and solves this cell for the 6, and then he solves for the 2 and for the 3, finishes up block 6. After doing the 2 and the 3, he comes in, goes and makes a naked pair, 2, 9, cleans that up because he's still not sure if he's going to be able to finish the solve. He gets up here and goes, okay, working the 6B because of this 6, it can't be a 6 here anymore. So he knows the 6 has to be there. He's able to solve that for a 3. And then he'll come down and clean up the 6 and the 2 in block 7. After doing that, he comes up and notices, okay, the only place left for the 3 is right there, so this has to be your 9. So he solves the 9, solves the 3, comes in here in block 5 and solves the 9 and the 2, comes down and makes some more solves with the 6, knowing that he can solve for the 6 here, gets rid of these 2s, and then he comes back. And in case you're not familiar, Sudoku Pad, they did a new upgrade. Actually, Simon likes to say, anytime there's a 3 in the corner, he sings, instead of that's me in the corner, that's 3 in the corner, from the song Losing My Religion. So now whenever you put a 3 in a corner, it gives you a little bit of confetti. So that's what you do. Put the 3 right there, and hopefully you can kind of see, makes a little bit of a confetti move. So this was not the world's hardest Sudoku. Mark got through it in about 8 minutes. It was about the same amount of time I did it leisurely without thinking I was getting pranked. A little bit slow for Mark, but hopefully you enjoyed it. You do need to check out this other video if you want to understand and solve GAS puzzles even better. Thank you so much for watching.